IVM.
Hey everyone, welcome to Shunya One, episode 160. Amit, how you doing?
I'm doing good. This is a different one, isn't it?
This is a very different, very interesting, new conversation, and I'm glad we did it because I think we meet a lot of people, like we were saying earlier, from obviously the startup world, the ecosystem around it, like VCs and operators and founders and whatnot. But we haven't spoken to too many, let's say, uh, ecosystem enablers,
Mhm.
and that too folks like this who are, let's say, like hardcore government
Yep.
foundations where
No, and
it's actually an foundation, meaning uh, they're just trying to promote
yep.
digital governance, which is
No,
great.
and what I find really interesting, right, is that governance is probably one of the areas more people in India probably interact with government services than they do with any kind of private services. Right,
Absolutely,
just
absolutely,
given the
yeah.
levels of like poverty and what have you, right? This is very much something that's been in the been there. And if anybody who is really kind of transforming those services in a significant and meaningful way, I think that really is helpful, and I think that's a great mission for these guys to have.
No, and that thankfully, we have Viraj Tyagi, the CEO of eGov Foundation, talking to us today, and he's going to talk to us about all the various things they've built and the government OS, as I think you called it, that they have actually built. So let's take a break and jump right in. Hey Amit, how's it going? What have you been up to?
I'm doing well, man. Continuing to read up on these Intel case studies that we've been talking about for the last few weeks, right? Really one amazing example after another.
Really? So what's got your attention this week?
So I was looking at some of the full stack solutions that Intel's been deploying, right? What they call edge to the cloud.
Yes, I have heard about that program. They actually did some work with Audi, right?
Yeah, Audi is one of the really, really cool examples. So basically what used to happen is Audi used to pull 1 out of 1,000 cars out to manage QC, right? That's basically one car every day. Now, Audis are expensive cars, right? So they're clearly not happy about destroying a car every day. And so, it's way too costly.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, I imagine not the most effective way of doing things either, right? I mean, it tells you very little about what the other 999 cars that pass through was whether they're okay or not.
Yeah, no, and so Intel deployed a solution, what they call from the edge to the cloud, right? So the solution basically involved robotic welding systems, which they combined with an algorithmic approach, right? And what this resulted in was like an end result was essentially accurate insights into what was happening on the floor, and this allowed them to
Wow.
be much more effective.
Wow. Okay. I got to check this one out too. This is also on intel.in.
Yep, go for this one and a whole lot more other really interesting case studies. You can go to intel.in and read up on this stuff and see how businesses are working with Intel today.
Hey, Viraj, welcome to the show. Welcome to Shunya One. Thank you so much for being here.
Very excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it's your first podcast, if I'm not wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, my
Oh,
first
wow.
wired headphones also.
Lovely. So it's going to be interesting, I hope. And of course, I would love to get into the kind of work that you do, and of course, yeah, a little bit of your personal background, so that everyone listening in today can understand how eGov sort of came to be.
Yeah. So I think let me just split into two parts. My personal background is I'm very new to the sector. I'm only 5 years into the social impact sector. Before that, did bunch of things. Was a banker for about 10 years in UK and Europe. Then came back to India in 2004. Worked for a bank for a while here, Standard Chartered Bank. And then the startup kind of bug hit me in 2007. I started with another colleague of mine, Nitin Gupta, an organization called Net Positive, which was one of the first big data analytics setup in India at that time. And we did some bunch of crazy stuff. We kind of worked in 14 countries, Middle East and Asia, mainly financial services, retail financial services. We did both products and analytical services. And 2012, one of our customers, Equifax, which is a large credit bureau, approached us saying we're interested in taking a stake in your organization. And Nitin and I looked at each other and say, yeah, why not? I think let's give it a shot. So I think, long story short, 2015, we exited net positive, kind of sold it to Equifax, and uh, and I have always had this throbbing vein or a kida in my head to do something about what's happening around us. So I think when I came out, I for a while worked with Delhi government in for about 6 months. I was head of a task force for clean Yamuna and water and sanitation, and that was a very interesting experience for me to work in government. And I was pretty, uh, went with a lot of trepidation whether I can add value. But I was quite pleasantly surprised the problem solving skills and connections and entrepreneurial energy you bring into a situation, how it can move things forward. 6 months later, I kind of went and met Nandan and said, "This is I want to do something at scale with government, which kind of improves how things are around us." And he kind of said, eGov Foundation is something he started in 2003, and he said he felt it's an important problem to solve. India is urbanizing. Urbanization is the real force behind what our future is going to be economically, socially, and all those things. But our focus on delivering services in the urban areas, having the right governance in urban areas, is not really that high. And that was the mandate of eGov Foundation, and he felt it it can scale up much more. And that led to a series of conversations, and I really liked the work which was happening there. I really like the mission that we want to kind of transform governance and service delivery in India. And that's how I got here. And after that, it's been a crazy journey. I've never had so many challenges in my life. I thought I had seen it all, being a honcho in a bank and then ran a startup. But this is a different kettle of fish. So this has been an amazing journey after that.
Wow. And if you could, yeah, go into the, actual platform a little bit, because like you said, Nandan Nilekani started this a while ago, and then, it seems like it's a bundle of services for various stratas of the government layers. I don't know if how you would call it, but what is it today? And what have you seen this sort of transformation, like you said, since you joined?
Yeah.
What have you seen it become?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting thing. For a lot of us who come from corporate background, we are so used to having target segments that you say, I'm going to launch a neobank, and it's going to
Yeah.
be 30-year, or millennials and stuff like that. You can actually carve out things around that. When you work on societal problems, I think one of the first things I learned was there is no one target segment. You need to service the citizens of all hues and stratas. From somebody who lives in a slum who doesn't actually use the mobile phone, right? But they also need services. Two people, who are kind of live in West Coast in that sense, right, in India, and then there are government employees who are, in a lot of ways still stuck in the 18th century system of files and paperwork. And when the whole world has moved to using different kind of tools to make their work less less of a drudgery, then there
Yeah.
are bureaucrats who need information and accountability and all those things. Then there are policymakers. So I think one of the first things that we realized was we cannot be servicing only one of these. If you look at different parts of the societal system, the what we call Samaj Sarkar Bazaar, the communities, the markets, and the government. There are multiple stakeholders. And this was one of the reasons why we had not scaled, because we kind of thought of ourselves as somebody who services the government. So almost like a tech vendor, albeit
Right.
as a foundation to the government. And that kind of makes you take certain decisions, certain approaches. You're always solving for what somebody wants. So when we started thinking in 2015, 16 about if we really want to make a big impact at a society at a national level, right? What should it look like? And I think where we kind of net it out is, unless we really unshackle or unblock various actors by having an approach which we broadly call platform approach, which is building open platforms which are multi-sided in that sense, right? And really taking away some of the capability constraints the system has. So that's the other thing, when we work in corporate sector, the capabilities are very well understood. You go and pitch to a bank, I want to give you a core banking system. You pretty much know the language you're talking, and you say, "Acha, you need to do these 25 things." They will find a way of doing it, or they'll tell you what they need. Of course, there are pushes and pulls. I think when you work in this sector, the capabilities are not a given in that sense. I think government is very good at scaling. Government is very good at deploying stuff, but government is not good at really understanding technology and how it works. Okay. So I think you need to actually solve for those capability constraints rather than saying, what if those capabilities were there? So I think in a way you're kind of solving for the capacity challenges that each of the actors have or the constraints they work with. So where we netted out was, we kind of said, rather than being a vendor and building custom solutions for various governments, what if we said we create an open platform, we call it Digit, which is digital infra for governance, impact, and transformation, and really build it on the latest stack, which is what Facebook, Netflix, and all these dudes use, and which is nationally scalable. But don't get into the business of implementation. Actually build an ecosystem around it, which implements it and deploys it and builds new solutions on top of it. But equally work on the policy side with the government and say, this is another way of solving, rather than doing RFP for every time, saying, please build a property tax system for me, or please build a system to handle grievances, and build a point solution, right? You actually have a platform on which you can build multiple solutions, right? So that was a big bet we kind of made, 5.5 years ago. And we basically, in some ways, we had a lot of knowledge we had built over, 13 years. But we actually built it completely new. So it was a very tough decision to say what we had built, which has worked, I think, pretty well. It's not that it hasn't worked. Chennai has been running for the last 11 years. It works very well. But I think it didn't meet our ambition of being a national scale player.
Interesting. So, if I understood correctly, what you're looking at is essentially you're creating well, for lack of a better term, like a government OS, and you're asking people to build solutions on top of that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Wow. All right. So,
only difference being, you need to create some imagination. So we did build some reference solutions on top of it, which basically like starter pack. You can start off with that.
Can you give us some examples around that? Like, so first, examples in terms of like, what are the kind of solutions you build on top, and what is the underlying tech that exists to facilitate those solutions? I guess that might be a really broad question, but I think a little context would be helpful to people listening.
So I think the solutions are, for example, if you're a citizen, there are 3 or 4 things you need from a services point of view. You need to kind of apply for various things, from applying for a trade license, you're opening a new shop, or you apply for a new water connection, new sewerage connection. You want to build a extension to your house, you want a building plan approval. So there are a lot of applications we have, which kind of, or you need a fire no objection certificate, all those kind of things. So that's one. Second is you need to complain. You need to say, there's garbage outside my door, right? Not just complain, but you need to track it, what's happened to it, and all those kind of things. And then you're saying you need information about what's happening in your locality. Where are the various functionaries who can help you. And finally, you need to pay your taxes, municipal taxes, and all those things, right? So those are property tax payment, water bill payment, your payment of your charges, various kind of charges. So those are kind of solutions. So those are kind of solutions that we've built, about 12, 13 of those, right? But then there are solutions for the service delivery people, right? So we have like inboxes, you have workflow, you have approval processes, you have alerts, you have dashboards to see what's happening in various kind of areas, real-time dashboards and all that. So that's the way it is different is, I think one thing I forgot to mention was the reason why when we say I want to get something done with the government is, and people kind of say, boss, this is, I'd rather not. I'll pay. I'll pay a tout and say, boss, please, I can't be dealing with this, right? Because there's a basic, trust deficit. You go there and say,
Transparency, yeah, lack of
yeah,
transparency. Yeah.
and trust. You say, boss, this is hard. Why would I go? I go to the municipality office. They'll send you three different windows. When I go
Yeah.
there, there's no transparency. Many application. I've given the application. What has happened to it, right? I think
What's
a
the
lot of times,
status? Yeah, yeah.
actually, it's very interesting. Actually, when we did research, we found that people are not that worried about that things take time. They expect the government takes time, right? But what they're worried about is what is happening. Can you tell me,
If
has it
it's
been
moving ahead.
processed? Yes.
Yeah.
Is it moving ahead? If it's stuck, where is it stuck? Right. So I think it's a bit like, when we used to take taxis 15 years ago, it was a broken process. So you call that guy in the night, you'll come tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock, I've got a flight. And you call two guys because one of them is not going to turn up, right? Then you don't know how much they're going to charge you. Then there's no update
Yeah.
what's happening, which driver is going to come, what kind of car is going to come. You get in the car, right? And the car is smelly or whatever. So I think every point of touch point, there is a stress which leads to this kind of thing, boss. It's not worth me, and that's why you say, boss, I'd rather call my driver at 4 o'clock in the morning. But what Ola, Uber, and all those people have done is actually using the digital signals from the whole value chain, right? At each stage, you know what's happening. So that's the real power of platforms, open platforms in the context of public services. That I raise a complaint, straight away I get a number. This your Thank you for complaining. This your number. It's been assigned to so and so person.
Ticket.
It
Yeah.
take it's a ticket, yeah. Then somebody says, okay, so, or there's an update. The person is coming today to fix this, right? When it is done, you say, okay, please rate it, right? It's very interesting. One of the IS officers said, it is amazing that earlier the citizens used to chase the municipal employees, but today the municipal employees chase the citizens so that they get the ratings.
feedback.
Please rate me, right? so, so,
Yeah.
so I think that is a very big difference that you see when you start using technology to create trust in the system, right? So, and the amazing thing is, in Andhra Pradesh, where we started working 6 years ago, they used to get 20,000 complaints a year. Once we put this system in place, they get more than 150,000 complaints a year. Not because there are more complaints, but because people have trust that this will work.
Yeah, to actually submit it.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
used to avoid submitting it before.
Absolutely. They'll say, what's the point? I mean, that's what people say. What's the point? Like, typically, why should I do it?
No, that's really interesting, right? I mean, like one of the really interesting things I find in this, right, is this idea that you're getting trust through the idea of basically making people open to reviews, right? Which is what you saw on Uber or Ola, or I mean, like Airbnb for that matter is the same kind of thing where trust has kind of come to it because there are so many people reviewing it. Zomato, all of these food aggregation or other restaurant listing apps, same kind of thing. I find it really fascinating that the same kinds of concepts are being used towards get to improving the facility of government capability, especially in context of what you mentioned earlier, right? Like there are capability constraints. So this is a way to kind of drive those actions. Seems like a really interesting choice you all made.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And it's also, a lot of times, and this is one of the biggest learning I have working with the government is we assign intent where there's capability issue, right? So a typical reaction in our middle class, this thing was, yes, Sarkar is by design, they don't want to do, and when I say Sarkar, I'm saying people who deliver services, like your municipal, they're people at the end of it, right? They're people who want to do, most of them, any sector, 80% of people want to do a good job and go home and, sleep peacefully, right? 10% are exceptional, 10% are crooks everywhere. You can go to, private sector or
Yeah.
but I think what my realization was, or you would think a district commissioner or a principal secretary is very powerful, right? But they operate with much more constraints than a chief technology officer or a head of sales in a private sector, because they are bound by rules and they're bound by what access they have to capacities and capabilities around them. So it's very interesting actually working with government.
And in all of this, what you guys were doing as a mandate was it just digitizing, or was it also improving processes, or what was the length of, let's say, the capability you were given as a foundation, right? Because I believe this is also another thing about, since you mentioned earlier, most people don't or avoid working with a government as a even a vendor, right? Because they feel it's too constraining, it's doesn't, there's no open thinking, there's all of that. Like, I can speak from a tech vendor standpoint, it's
Right,
always
right.
restrictive. So how much of that applied to you as a foundation?
No, I think you have to work on that. That's what I'm saying. Just doing technology alone is not going to cut it. You can make the sexiest technology in the world, it will not work unless you address policy. Okay, because remember, government, the biggest lever for change is actually policy. I mean, in terms of when I say policy, what are the kind of things that you can do, right? What are the kind of enablement or enabling policies you can create so that adoption happens, right? So I think one of the things we have been really working for the last 5 to 6 years is working in the both at the central and state government and saying there is an alternate view of the world, right? Which is that you don't have to do RFP for every time you have to build application to deliver service, right? You can actually use an open platform, open source technology, and we will kind of underwrite the performance of the platform. But it's like an OEM or an OS for your service delivery, and then you are kind of your insurance or assurance of results is much higher. So we've
So,
worked
sorry,
very hard. Sorry, Con.
no, just trying, how does that work, right? I mean, like when you say that you don't need to do RFP, how does the government go about, let's say, state government X exists, which wants to go about, which wants to build a new service or wants to redo a service, and like, but you guys are a possible implementation form. How would the mechanics of that work?
So I think first of all, we took ourselves out of any commercial engagement with governments because
So
I
then,
remember having a
how is your system? How is your platform implemented?
so
You all are not.
basically then, yeah. So what we've done is we've built an ecosystem of system integrators. So let's say Odisha. So we met Odisha about almost two and a bit years ago, and we said they were running a certain system by a certain tech firm for last 10 years. Nothing was happening, and we met the principal secretary. There's another way of doing it, right? That you do a RFP only for system integration or implementation. Okay,
Okay.
take the platform, and we took them through what platform does, what it doesn't do, which are the other states that have done it, how much, and we help them, how will the specs look of the platform and everything. And then our commitment was whichever partner you choose, we'll enable them. So whether in terms of how the platform works, how to consume the APIs, how to configure things, how to deploy it, all those things, right? So I think so. We have three roles in the ecosystem. Obviously, we are the main contributor to the open source platform, so other people also contribute. We are a platform builder, a main contributor to the platform. Then the big other role we have is we are the ecosystem enabler, right? In a way, we are catalyzing a market, right? Over a OS, as you were saying earlier, right? And the third role is really working with policymakers to say how this particular construct can actually be adopted at scale across the nation. Does that
Okay.
answer your
I
question?
actually, I want
Kind
to
of.
go a little deeper on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually want to go a little deeper on that, Viraj. But you know what? We're going to take a quick break and
Okay.
come back and get those answers.
Sure, sure. Okay.
There has been a lot of noise about the Internet of Things, or IoT, and its impact on our lives. There are now billions of physical devices around the world that are now connected to the Internet. From something as small as an AirPod to something as big as a plane, all are collecting and sharing data. However, more devices and more data means more complexity. Intel helps you counter this complexity by letting you do more with less. IoT solutions from Intel fuse the power of edge and cloud computing with advanced orchestration to speed insights that help maximize revenue and reduce costs while revealing new ways to compete, win, and build your business of tomorrow. To learn more about how you can connect the unconnected in an end-to-end IoT solution built using the secure, scalable, and manageable Intel IoT platform, visit intel.in.
Hey, welcome back, Viraj. You were obviously sharing with us a whole bunch of details around the kind of things you as your organization does, and you actually mentioned that it's not just tech; it's also helping governments improve their process, helping governments choose partners to work with. Given that a lot of this is, though, of course, enabled by technology, and technology which you guys have built or spec'd and laid out the platform for. What are those building blocks? And if I were, let's say, a potential tech company or a startup or someone who's trying to, who feels that maybe I can help the government with a better service for, let's say, a portal which I use today, right? I mean, I know there is something better that can be done here. I know we can use ABC technology. How do I go about it, and how do you, like, can you walk us through an example that you enabled?
Yeah. So I think from a very simple architecture perspective, what we did was we said you need to unbundle, the components, right? So I think the historical way of doing things is you just build monoliths using, you need to
Yeah.
solve a problem, of raising grievances in a particular city. You build a solution which has workflow kind of hard coded. It has databases, all that kind of things, right?
Yeah.
But the issue is what happens is the data gets locked, and it's very difficult to move forward when something changes, right? Because I mean, and India is a complex. Let's not forget, India is a subcontinent. I think it's a continent. You know,
Yeah.
number of states and number of various
The complexity of life here.
complexity. I mean,
Yes.
it's just crazy. It's crazy, right? I think the what applies to Bombay doesn't apply to Bhilwara, and so on and so
Correct.
forth. And the other thing is we talk about urban India. Urban India is anywhere from a small city like Tenali in Andhra Pradesh, 20,000 people, to obviously, Delhi, which is 2 crore people, right? So it's complex both from a scale and the diversity perspective, right?
Right.
So coming back, what we did was we basically abstracted it to three kind of components. One is what we call a core data infra, which basically defines what is where. Okay, so it has a set of registries. There's a property registry, there's a water registry, there's an employee registry. So all the registries, which is basically what we call irreputable data, is kind of stored there. It also has specs. So I think we are big fans of specs. So I think we really believe spec is one of the biggest thing we can contribute so that other people can build stuff. So we spec, how is the service built? What does the service compose of? We do taxonomies, ontologies, and stuff like that, right? So that without us in the room, people can use it, right? So I think we have the core data infra. It also has a small data exchange layer, so that different entities can exchange data and stuff like that. Then we have what we call core services, or which is things like payments. So every service needs a payment.
Right.
Things
Correct.
like
And you built
supply.
this from scratch, or you also
Build
used,
this.
like you said, bundles or third party components or some stuff like that?
I think most of it
Because
is built
payments
from
is
scratch.
actually, there's so much payments infra given by the government itself, like
Yeah,
very other
yeah.
organizations of the government.
No, so we don't. We still, at the end of it, we'll still do UPI or all those things, right? But processing payments,
Right.
raising a demand, making a
Okay.
collection. So we have collection service, demand service, payment service, right?
Got it.
So similarly, you have routing service. Similarly, you have assigning service. You need to assign it to somebody, right? So there are, I think, 25, 30 services like that. Basically, any service delivery kind of a function will need that, right? So they're abstracted. So same collection
Nice.
service can be used by electricity board, can be used by water board, and it's like Lego block, typical microservices. It's a microservice architecture, by the way, right? So you can
Lovely.
combine them in multiple ways and say, okay, things like authentication, auditing, all those. So both on infra side and the service side, those services are there. And the third, and all this is kind of through open APIs. So we have, published APIs. If you go to digit.org.in, published APIs of all of these, right? And then over that we have reference application which says how do you combine a payment services, auditing service with authentication services and property registry to actually create a demand for a property, which is self assessment. Okay, how do you kind of create a workflow which is role based, not people based, all those kind of things. So that's the reference application layer, right? So
Okay.
all the reference solutions. So those are the three key layers. So and then all the applications have extension hooks. So somebody says in my locality, actually, it's not a two-step process, it's a three-step process. Yeah, please go ahead and do that. Right. Somebody says I need
Got
to
it.
build a hospital appointment booking system. So there is a ticketing system. There's a ticketing services. There's a registry services. There is a alert service. Please combine them in these ways and you build it. So today, almost, I would say,
Lovely.
between we built some 12, 13 kind of reference applications, there are 30 plus or 40 plus applications built by various ecosystem actors.
Wow. So, how many states are you all present in right now?
So right now, at various stages of implementation, there are about 14 states.
Okay,
Yeah, and
that's
only one of them, and none of only one of them we implemented, which is Punjab, which we call exemplar, to show people that actually you can do it in 90 days. You don't need to take
good.
2 years to build a
Nice.
municipal ERP or municipal solution, right? And you can do it in AWS. By the Punjab runs on AWS, so the first, you know, and you can do it rather than spending 200 crore on RFP, you can do it in 8 crore rupees. I mean, that's the kind of difference, order magnitude
Wow.
difference that you have in when you say faster, better, cheaper. It actually is faster, better, cheaper. So it's pretty cool that way.
Wow. And we I mean, maybe depends on where you live and where the kind of access you have to these services as a citizen. We obviously have seen a lot come out from the government in all these years, right? I think India as a country has been on this digitization and convenience of government services path for a while. I mean, apart from the core stuff like Aadhaar and UPI, there's also a bunch of these, I think, DigiLocker apps that you use, and within that you have all of these other government services who give things digitally. Are these pipes also sort of intertwined with the kind of work you do or the kind of systems you've built? I mean, I'm referencing only the ones which I've obviously interacted with, apart from the income tax website, which we all have, maybe. But what are the various services which you can say stand out amongst the things that you have delivered, enabled delivery of?
I think I would say till now our focus has been the urban service delivery. We've recently, I mean, I'll give you a great example when how things can come together quickly to respond to a situation, right? So when COVID, the first lockdown happened March last
Right.
year, right? We all saw the pictures of the policemen were doing their duty mostly to kind of make sure people don't go out. People were trying to get to their work for essential services, and there were scenes of people being beaten up and stuff like that. And I think we saw it and we said maybe this is something we can respond to. Okay, so ultimately, e-pass is basically a permission to be in a certain place for a certain reason, right?
Yeah.
Correct, and it needs to be. So we actually within 8 days for essential services workers using the components from Digit from our platform, we created a e-pass system, which was basically from the service provider can upload the names of people who need to be given e-passes. Then it goes through a process from the local authorities can then quotas in terms of how many people can be on the road on a particular day. And then it used to go through a kind of a QR code based pass will go to their employees with a SMS, which people can verify. And we had more than 8 states take it up in in 20 days. More than 10 lakh journeys happened. So this is I mean
Nice.
that was really the moment where I felt we can do much more than just urban. And now we've done last yesterday we went live in Odisha again using Digit platform on at the bottom to do sanitation services. All these small towns have fecal sludge. They have septic tanks,
Yeah.
and you don't know where it goes, right? How frequently it is. So we have basically created a digital solution around that, the whole value chain of shit being picked up, where it is taken, how it is processed, and all those things. So I think, but ePass was a great example of
Nice.
responding to
Yeah.
the situation that country was facing, and it was not just the technology, also because the way we operate, how the ecosystem worked with us. So we have from Unilever to PNG to volunteers from companies to AWS, all those people working with us to make it happen. Try was involved in that. So I think that's something that stands out in my mind at least.
So that's actually interesting, right? You're talking about the movement. So from primarily urban, when you go statewide, I'm guessing. So you mentioned urban, rural, urban state. Sorry, city, state, and country, right? At some point in time, in terms of this, but rural is part, I guess, in some ways of state or country. This, but how is that, right? I mean, like, how different is that? Because again, when you're doing or the one of the challenges I think I would see, right, is that there is a certain amount of population density in urban, which leads to a certain amount of tax base, which leads to a certain amount of ability to spend, and that ability to spend in rural on a per capita basis is probably not as high, right? Or sorry, because the capita is so lower, it's probably not as high on a cumulative basis. So are there going to be ecosystem partners who will service that primarily, or how do you see that playing out?
No, I think your point is absolutely valid. The service delivery is service delivery. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter. There are only 4 or 5 things that need to be done. You need to. So I think, in fact, we just went live with something called Mgram Seva in Punjab last week, which is essentially having the water bills from a gram panchayat, done through a very simple, interface that even a pump operator can use in the local language and all those things. So I think there is no reason why you cannot apply what we're doing in rural. Okay, it's just that I think it's not. See, it takes time. I think this is the other thing you learn working in the societal sector, that it's not that it'll catch like wildfire and everybody will adopt it. There are a lot of things that need to align. The policy, the officers, the government intent, everything needs to align before you make something like that happen. But short answer is there is no reason why. And some of our partners have taken this to rural areas also.
So
And do
when
any of these?
uh,
Sorry, go ahead, Amit.
no, you go. Okay, yeah, mine's actually follow up. So yeah, so when you're going into a rural area or even an urban area for that matter, right? So again, you're deploying via your ecosystem partners. So if you're
Yes.
deploying via the ecosystem partners, I'm guessing this is still part of the tendering system that exists in governments right now. That's been there forever, right? So does basically using Digit or the e-governance platform, is that part of the tender that is submitted, or is that something that you are
Yeah.
looking at ecosystem partners to use as a competitive advantage from a price perspective? I mean,
Both.
like, okay.
Yeah. So sometimes we'll go to a government, and so we play that role of a catalyst in that sense.
Mhm.
Sometimes we'll go to the government and say, "What are you doing about governance?" And they'll say, "This is what I'm planning to do." And we'll say, if you like, Odisha is a good example, that where we initiated the conversation. We said, you know, uh, look at Digit, and we did a evaluation process. We do a very consultative evaluation process. So it's not that we want to sell something. And once they were kind of over the line, they issued an RFP which had Digit as a default from a technology point of view. But Calcutta Municipal Corporation, one of our partners, took the solution themselves because they felt it's going to give them. So both models work in that sense.
And so it's not like, I mean, like, in the private sector, it's not like SAP where you have to implement it throughout the entire company. So similarly, you don't have to implement Digit throughout the entire company. There is through the entire government. There's a mix and match capability.
Yeah, yeah. But now what has happened is in August this year, we signed a MOU with the Ministry of Urban Affairs in Delhi, where they have launched a mission called National Urban Digital Mission. And Digit was selected as a platform for a national hosted service they will provide to all the states.
So that will
So,
lead to
so
additional implementation here.
yeah, yeah, and that's also they'll also give incentives in various schemes to states to adopt it, or states can say, I can. There are standards that go with that. I can comply to your standards or specs, and I'll not use the platform. That's also okay, right? But I think trying to create uh, ensure that the right specs and standards are used, whether by using the platform which is hosted by the central government, or creating instance of that for their own state, or making sure their existing systems comply to those specs and standards.
And in all of this, my question was actually going to be around, how obviously so much of this is already implemented. There are more things you guys are solving. Who how does, let's say, to my earlier point, how does a private company or startup or someone who has, who wants to build on top of these layers participate? Do they collaborate? Do you also like work with uh, other teams who help you,
Yeah,
let's say, improve your OS, or is it all in house? Do you hire your own tech talent? That means you're also competing with, let's say, the heavy tech industry of the country, where
yeah.
everyone's hiring the best tech talent. How do you do it today?
I think our approach increasingly is that we need to get more people building on this. Okay, because I
Hmm.
think we are not a we look at ourselves as a catalyst, not as a we're not interested in going to 500 people. We're quite happy being 80, 90 people where we are. I think, but we obviously want to see more impact, and that can only happen when there are more and more things happen without us. Okay, so already the market is. So we're very happy we're not needed in all the market conversations, right?
Right.
Okay. We're very happy that national government has taken up the mission to take it to all the 30 odd states. That's amazing, right? And basically we are only interested in that the last person in a small town gets the service that they need at the right
Right.
time with the right quality, right? So we're very happy, that government is spending money on the mission that we had started, so many years ago.
Right.
Similarly on dev, I think it's taken us some time, but I think, and you should speak to our CTO, Manish. He's a crazy guy, right? So I think, and we're saying we have to be open, right? There's no secret here, right? So right now,
Hmm.
all our specs are published through Gitbook on an open this thing. But I think we need to get better at getting people in, understanding what we do and how they can, because people want to contribute. That's what we're seeing, right? So we run co-creation workshops, we do webinars, but we need to do much more. But our philosophy clearly is that we got to really only bring in scarce resources, right? Resources which are already there. Let's so yeah, I think that's where we're going.
Interesting. And as a, I don't know, shout out to for folks who are in this, in obviously not just the tech space, but interested in improving genuinely the various services. Where would you point them to? What would you recommend they start with? Should they try out? Obviously, they can try out building so many things on top of the platforms that you've enabled, but you want to do a recommendation on where to reach out, what to try, uh, and
So
how to get in touch
I
with
think,
you.
yeah, I think we have a page on our website, which I think is going to work, kind of engage with us, and you can just write to us, or if people are interested, they can write to me. I think it's important that we need to kind of get people who are interested to work here. I mean, because I think there's so much more you can do, and unless we distribute the ability to solve, we can never solve everything, right? I mean, we
Right.
still feel, we're only 10% fulfilling the promise of what we built in that sense, right? So I think right now they can write to me or they can write to Manish. I can share his email ID to you, but I'm happy for people to write to me also.
Cool, awesome, great. So I think just also like to remind everybody really quickly that please do rate us and review us wherever you're listening to this, Apple Podcast, Spotify, whatever it is. It does help us spread the word. And if you enjoyed this conversation that we had with Viraj, then please do let somebody know. That also does help a lot. Let them know about this conversation and let them know about the good work that's being done by the folks at Digit and eGov.
Exactly. And Viraj, I know we, as maybe technologists, a lot of us are introduced to what you guys are doing today. But like you said, we've probably experienced, hopefully many of us listening today have experienced some of the,
Yes,
things that you and your foundation have enabled. And it'll only get better from here. I think there's also a sense of people starting to believe this concept of trust that you said, that once they see trust in certain aspects of government, they will demand it everywhere else, and
yeah,
that will lead to a lot more innovation, I'm sure, which you guys will play a instrumental part of. So thank you for doing what you do, and hopefully you'll inspire a lot more people to take part in this
absolutely,
eGov
absolutely. Thank you so
process.
much. Great conversation, and as I said, people, you can point people to me if they want to talk more.
Can you just
Absolute.
say your email address actually on the air so that people know what it
Yeah,
is?
it's viraj.tyagi@egov.org.in.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Viraj.
Perfect. And that's also the
Super,
website, I think, where you can check out everything that eGov does. Thank you, Viraj. This was a great conversation. Thank you so much for being with
super.
us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
IVM.